Welcome. We're really excited about having you here today. My name is Chris Sliz. Lead the organizational development service line at Regional Government Services. I'm really pleased to be the moderator today. I think that you are going to find our panel exceptional. So just a couple of very quick introductions. Nancy Parcheski, you can probably see her up in the corner of your screen, as our host today. Nancy will be handling questions in chat. And do you want to talk just a couple of seconds about that, Nancy?
Sure. Yes, if anybody has any technical issues or anything, please go ahead and message me. You should be able to do that from the chat. Also, there will be a Q&A if you want to go ahead and put your questions there. We do have the last 10 to 15 minutes, we will be open to questions. So you can put them in there or have them ready, and we will be able to answer those for you. So
Great. Nancy,
you,
thank you for that. We also have Yolanda Taylor, who's our technical specialist, our training technical specialist in the studio. So thanks for being here today, Yolanda. Our
Thank
three
you, Chris.
panelists, we are very appreciative of having the three of you here and being able to tap into your expertise. I'm going to do a very brief introduction and let you get into more detail with regard to your introduction. We have Brittany Moore from Citrus Heights Water District. We have Stephanie Holloman from Orange County Fire, and Kay Randolph Pollard from Regional Government Services. And Brittany, I'm going to start with you and let you do a little bit more detailed introduction of yourself and your background.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Moore. I'm the Administrative Services Manager for Citrus Heights Water District. I'm coming up on my 7th year with the district, and I have coming up on my 13th year in public sector. I started with city government. I have my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in human resources. So primarily, my current role, I oversee human resources, risk management, along with some clerk of the board function. And then I furthered my education and am wrapping up my MBA this spring semester at Sacramento State. Again, primarily working in human resources now, but when I was with the city, I worked City of Roseville in the Department of Finance, utility billing, project management, utility infrastructure, all of that. So.
Great. Brittany, thank you. You have lots of experience to share. Stephanie, do you want to go ahead and spend a couple minutes introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Stephanie Holloman. I'm an assistant chief with Orange County Fire. I've been in human resources and personnel services for 21 years. I've been with Orange County Fire for 5 as the human resources director overseeing all HR functions for Orange County Fire Authority. We serve 2 million residents in Orange County, Southern California, over 78 fire stations. I also serve as the chair for the International Association of Fire Chiefs Human Resources Committee. That's the national level for our Fire Chiefs Association. Just really happy to be here and happy to share insights with my colleagues on this topic. Thank you.
Stephanie, thanks for being here. Kay?
Hi, I'm Kay Randolph Pollard. I work with Regional Government Services currently, and I lead the recruiting team here. But I have been in private and public sector 30 more years, a long time, working in a variety of different industries in private sector and in public sector for probably 25 years as well, working at a county level, a city level, and human resources primarily. Also did some time as an administrative services manager for one of the departments while I was with the county. So my experience is broad, and working with RGS, we work with a large variety of agencies of all sizes that we come in and help and support as well. So.
Great. Thank you. And again, thanks to the three of you for being here today. So I'm going to just jump into the questions that we have. And if those of you who are listening have questions, again, go ahead and put those into the Q&A portion on the screen, and we'll pop there at the end of the session. We'll also see if we can't weave some of them into our conversation. So Stephanie, I'm going to start with you with this first question. And this first question, I think, is something that's on everyone's mind, and that is, what are the biggest challenges public organizations face in recruiting and retaining top talent in the current job market?
Yeah, that's a really big topic nowadays, especially with so many employers and such a small pool of highly qualified candidates. I know a lot of agencies are trying to leverage AI and technology in order to help facilitate that process, but I like to keep my fingers on the pulse with the newer generation that's coming into the workforce. And the best resource I have for that are my oldest children and my nieces and nephews. And one of the things that has resonated with me when I talk to them is that they feel this desire to be seen and valued immediately. So one of the things that they share with me is when they text one another on the phone, they want an immediate response from the person, either a like, a thumbs up, a something. And it's this term, and for those of us who don't have teenagers, it might be a new term, but unseen and unheard. And they take that as you're overlooking them. They feel unseen and unheard. So as we're looking at revamping recruitment and retention processes, and we're also trying to leverage technology and AI to make that process easier and less administratively burdensome for our recruitment teams. One thing that I caution agencies on is not to go so far that we lose that human element of the recruitment process.
Mhm.
What are we doing to make candidates feel like we want them? Because this is a very small pool of candidates that are going to come out of college or out of their first 1 to 5 years of work experience, highly qualified, and they are looking for a destination employer. And so that starts from the moment they turn in their application. Do they get an immediate response from your agency that says, thank you for your application, we are reviewing it? While they're going through the process, is there some way that you're keeping tabs on them or giving them the ability to see where they are in the process? Congratulations, you've passed the first review. We're moving you to the second step of the review process. Those little nuggets of connection to the candidates is going to keep them engaged, and it's going to make them feel like you see them and you hear them. So
Okay.
I really caution public agencies with going too far the technology route where everything becomes automated and it loses that human component.
Great points. Thank you so much for that. And Kay, what would you add in terms of challenges right now?
And I would just segue with what Stephanie shared is candidate care is what we call it is paramount. Candidates have lots of options and lots of choices, and where they feel cared and supported in their application process, it's important. No longer is the I'm a local agency or I'm a government agency that I have the best job, you're going to come. No, there's great jobs in all sectors everywhere. There's lots of choice for people. We also find that your best candidates are working and they're busy and they don't have time in their traditional 8 to 5 day. And so doing things outside of that can, or in a lunch hour, can really help support them. Because if they're truly looking for something different, they might have multiple places that they're interviewing with, and supporting them and not taking too much time off and valuing that time of theirs is very, very helpful. And again, just, Stephanie, you're right. I hear all the time from my son who's recently been in a job search. Nobody gets back to anybody. If you're getting back to someone and sharing that, you're going to start to gain their trust in terms of how you're valuing them as a person. So
Okay, thank you so much. And Brittany, what would you add?
I would echo everything that Stephanie and Kay have said. I think it's about engagement. There's obviously a shift with social media. So making sure that we know where to target candidates of the younger demographic. A challenge that I'm experiencing right now, separate and apart from that, is aging workforce and making sure this institutional knowledge loss and transfer is being captured appropriately. So.
Great point. So, in terms of the things, if you answered really my first two questions, and this my second question is what kind of strategies or initiatives work in attracting people? So some of it is keeping the candidate engaged. Some of it is that candidate care and making sure that you're paying attention to the schedule, recognizing, valuing their time and the way that they value their time, and not being too hands off with regard to AI. So, and really taking a look, what I hear you talking about, Brittany, in terms of the challenges is taking a look at the demographics of your workforce and how you bring people in a way in a way that's smooth in terms of that handoff. But what other things are there that you're doing that help you um, attract successful top talent?
I think for
Go on, Brittany. I
Oh.
have something to add.
Go ahead,
Um,
Brittany.
so I think it's the outreach component. So looking at new ways to gain eyes when we have a position open, again, with social media. So using LinkedIn, tapping into the networks of myself and my colleagues, others where, maybe it's 1 degree of separation. Have I missed this candidate? So using those strategies, as well as Instagram, things that just, 5-10 years ago may not have been at the top of a marketing plan, Facebook, things of that nature. So,
So that social media, taking advantage of social media.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what were you going to say?
I was going to say marketing. Like, do not use the job description language in your marketing pieces. The job description is a job description, and they don't speak to your culture. They don't speak to your management style, your organization, or really what you're looking at in work style and competencies for your organization. So you need to kind of layer over another kind of type of language that speaks to someone's feelings to click on a link of why they want to come work at your organization. And using social media imagery and words, as well as in your just general post, that explains a little bit more about what makes someone successful in that role or successful in your organization. To tie, they can read a job description, but that's your duties and your tasks. But what is it like to work there? What makes them successful for that team? And finding some language to bring that into the conversation so someone can see themselves there. Can someone see themselves working at your organization, and how might they fit? What kind of value can they bring? And you want to elicit that from a candidate so you get more clicks. We're watching our clicks. We're watching the turnover and see how those come through. And that really helps. And I agree with Brittany. LinkedIn, if your organization has a LinkedIn professional account, or if not, if you have people that can at least put that on their pages. And for those people that use NeoGov, if you happen to contract, they have another thing that they're doing to connect local government employees with jobs and opportunities, and soft selling that. When you're on LinkedIn, you don't go, I want you to apply for my job. You say things like, oh, I need your help. We have this great opportunity. Would you help me get the word out? But you target the people you want to apply. And so, and they might think of themselves in that way, or they're not ready for a move, but they might have a peer or someone else that they know. So,
it speaks to Brittany's point about 1 degree of separation. So you put it out, and you may ask your employees to go ahead and on their LinkedIn page, ask them to post it share it on their LinkedIn page or their Instagram, so that you get that broader audience of people who already know your industry because they know your employee.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Stephanie, what would you add? Strategies for success.
This question was good for me when I was reading it, because your question was attracting qualified candidates. And as we're seeing now, people are jumping careers and industries all over the place. So for us, one of the things that's been really successful is getting back down to basics and creating an apprenticeship program where we're hiring people for qualities, not necessarily qualifications, because they may not come in with exactly spot on the types of qualifications that you're looking for, but man, they've got the work ethic, they've got the attitude, they've got the fit and the mentality for the kind of work that they're going to do. So particularly for those types of jobs that are non-traditional. For us, that was our community risk reduction, essentially our fire inspectors that go out and inspect buildings. It's not a sexy career, and it's not one that they teach you when you go to your career guidance counselor. We created an apprenticeship program where people can automatically progress through the steps in the classification. It doesn't require a selection process. Once they meet certain qualifications, they automatically promote to the next level. So people are assured that as long as they stay with the organization, they go through the task book, they learn the skills that we need them to learn, they will promote throughout the series. And it was a collaborative effort with our unions. But what we're doing now is when we hire at the lowest level, at the trainee level, we are looking at qualities. We are not looking at qualifications. And because of that, we're hiring people that have the right attitude. They don't know the work, but they want to learn the work and they want to be a service to the community. So for agencies that don't have apprenticeship programs where they have the ability to migrate through the series, I would highly encourage you guys to look at that as an option and then hire for the qualities, not the qualifications.
Stephanie,
You
I
know what,
love that
that's a-
you said that. As I've been trying to shift the way my management looks at building a candidate profile, I am leaning more towards let's identify what these soft skills are. Technical skills can be taught. We want the person with the right attitude that can learn this job and grow and will retain them. So
And Brittany, one way we do that is develop competencies for your organizations. What are those core competencies for success? They're not technical. They're all the soft stuff, the things that can't be taught.
And you know what I really love about this is we did one organization I worked for many years ago is we would hire bus operators that didn't know how to drive a bus. But they had customer service skills, they had really good interpersonal skills, they were very helpful. We figured we could teach them how to drive a bus, but it's really hard to get those qualities that you all are talking about. So really interesting conversation.
Yeah, and Chris,
So-
just
ahead.
to add on a little bit to that is that if you are going to go that route of interviewing for qualities, not qualifications, it's really training your interview panels on how to assess for that. Because we're shifting the way that we're interviewing, you have to train the panels on what are the things they should be looking for in the candidate, because the answers aren't going to be I have 5 years of doing this and I have 3 years of doing this. So it's really doing the back end work with your interview panels so that they know how to assess for that.
Thank you. So how has recruiting changed since, and it seems like it's changed a lot. And have the current economic conditions impacted the way you're recruiting now? You know,
I think
kind of
I think it's shifted this year, which shifted in the pandemic and a little bit after the pandemic, and it's shifting again this year because of the economic changes that we're seeing in the country. And,
Okay.
and recruitment always shifts. That's the known, is it's going to change because the economies change and you have to adapt. You have to see what the new, I'm aging myself. I'm pre-computer, pre-internet. At one point in time, I was like pushing Craigslist because I was doing IT recruiting, and then Monster, and now we're LinkedIn and Indeed. You have to keep your eye on what is shifting and what is changing in the market and where the candidates are going, and go there, because some new platform will come up that's going to, be a space, and it just always is changing.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie, were you going to respond to that?
Yeah,
too?
I think the economics and cost of living are something that's top of mind for everybody. And as we've seen, it's a driver where people are changing jobs quite frequently because they see that they can leverage their skills for more pay. So as we're recruiting and we're trying to retain people, one thing that we've done is whenever we have standing COLAs that we know are in place, we provide the full range, and we provide the full range for all of the COLAs that are coming, so that people can see that there is growth in the organization, and that if they hang out for 3 or 4 or 5 years, there are these built-in cost of living increases that they will experience if they stay with the organization. I think gone are the days where you can just have the base hiring range as on your announcements. They want to know that there's the possibility they can leverage their current salary to get higher into your range. And if you have obstacles in the way with regard to your organization's policies or rules with regard to advanced step hiring, you need to clear the way for that, because you're going to have to bring in candidates at the, second to the top step. Even if traditionally you wouldn't put them up that high, just because they're leveraging their income to get more.
You're not the only employer they're talking to.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, great point. And Brittany, would you add anything to that in terms
Yeah,
of changes?
I would completely agree with everything Stephanie's saying in terms of the salary range and COLA. Now more than ever, it's more important for public sector to be competitive because there are entry-level private sector jobs that are, offering higher pay, things of that nature, where before government was seen as the stability, the long term, the ladder. But I've seen folks that say, why would I come here and do field or manual labor and I can go, work at a Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that. So I think there has been a shift in the type of job that someone's willing to take just because of the pay that they can get elsewhere. And they're not so much looking at the long-term career trajectory. They're just like, I got to feed my family now. So
So and how can I do that? And how can I do that and make leverage my time
for
in a way
sure.
that I get the most salary?
Mhm.
Thank you. Great points. Okay, what were you going to add?
I was just going to add that what we've seen when you're down to negotiating with that finalist is that their current agency will move the range, go back and move the range to keep that employee because they don't want to lose them because they're a good employee. So there's a lot that is moving on the table, and they will, take it to council or do whatever they might need to do.
Then it's not just a matter of negotiating with the employee.
Yeah.
It is you really end up, there are a lot of players who are at the table that you might not know about
Exactly.
once you make a decision on the candidate. So do you think, and I know that I'm hopping around the question, the list of questions that I have. Brittany, I'm curious if you think that there are blind spots that we've had as employers when it comes to recruiting. What do you what are the blind spots you think that we have as public agencies?
I think the blind spot that Stephanie and her team are beginning to tap into, so the apprenticeship opportunities, right? We're
Mhm.
still expecting these candidates to come seek us out. We now need to be more proactive about offering programs to get them in the door. So I know that's something that our agency has been trying to be mindful of, but we haven't been there. So this is, new conversation within the last couple of years of how to develop those programs because we're not on everyone's radar, specifically the younger demographic that's more attracted to a tech environment or, somewhere that's offering maybe more perks that looks attractive on the surface. So those are things that I think us as HR professionals have to be more mindful of, and then just be looking around at the other trends that aren't at the forefront yet. So
Great. Thank you for that. Stephanie, what would you add to that? Blind
You know,
spots?
I think I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but one of the questions that we used to ask a lot, and it used to be something that was held against the candidate, was why do you jump around? Why do you have a gap in your employment? That used to be the thing. And if we saw that you only spent a year and a half at a job and switched again and then had a 6 months of a gap, and it was to your detriment as a candidate. And I think we have to reframe that as HR professionals, and we have to realize that that's just the way of the world nowadays. People are jumping for personal reasons, economic reasons, for professional reasons. So gone are the days where you're going to have candidates that have spent 7 years at one place. I think when we're evaluating these candidates, I think what's really important is what did they learn at each stop? And when they do have gaps in their employment, what did they do in the gap? Some of these candidates have amazing stories of what they've done in the gap for 6 months, a year and a half. And it's again, going to qualities, not qualifications. They've really picked up a lot of qualities along the way as they've progressed through the different chapters of their life, if you will. And that doesn't just go for new candidates. It also goes for very seasoned candidates as well. So I think HR in general has to reframe that traditional notion that we want people that have stayed places for years, because it's going to become more and more rare as the years go by.
Stephanie, I would
Great point.
completely agree with that. One of the trends that wasn't at top of mind for me until I went back to school was that people are moving around every 2 years. And, once you get your next degree, if you haven't moved a year or two post degree, there's kind of a stigma against that. So I screen resumes all the time. That wasn't something that I was thinking about. So it really shifted the way that I look at a candidate that's maybe moving every 2 years and kind of trying to dive into that, or looking at, okay, how would a partnership align with each other? How can I grow you in 2 to 3 years? If we have big projects and initiatives, how can you contribute to that, with me knowing after 36 months or so, you may be ready to move on?
Right, and providing them with the experience that's going to keep them there. So maybe it's moving a project every 2 to 3 years, so you keep the same candidate instead of losing them to another agency. But commensurate with that is, having the flexibility to maybe give them a little bit more pay if they're functioning at a higher level. So all of that has to align, but essentially you want to be the 5 different employers that they're going to go to, the next 5 in one place. Which is
Exactly.
a
So
challenge. It's a challenge. I don't mess around with that. It is a challenge, but I think we all have to start doing that if we're going to keep retaining our top quality
no,
people.
for sure. It's that mind shift of like, how do we make this a partnership, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I think you both are spot on. I think the other thing to look at is transitioning from different industries into government,
Mhm.
Especially with finance or some of those really hard to fill positions. If you can, again, look at the competencies and some of the core skills they might have, they're great candidates to be considering for certain jobs. They're going to need to learn. Government moves at a slower pace. Things happen a little different, but they're usually from bureaucracies that might be slow as well. And so I think just widening and opening up the ability to look at a wider range of candidate pools and where people might come from to fill some of those positions can really help. But Stephanie, making that plan for them and tie it, like, that is just perfect. And that's around culture of the organization. Like, if you can let someone know your culture of your organization, that you're going to have those opportunities and try to put them in place, then someone might go, I might get a little longevity and not be able and get some pay raises and opportunities to do some different things if I try this place. Look what they're doing, and sharing that around your organization.
So I'm going to ask a question that's not on the list of questions that I gave you, but I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit, and that's, what role does your culture play in your ability to attract and retain employees? What role does that play? Okay, you're talking about outreach, about the culture.
Yeah.
But what would you add to that?
I would say it's paramount for bringing someone in, because if you don't have an idea of what your culture, because sometimes leaders in local government don't understand how important culture is, and sometimes gets created without intention. And if you want to change it or shift it in a certain way, you have to be intentional about it. With RGS, flexibility, people that we do recruiting for other people, but when we're doing, and their culture is their culture, but when we're doing recruiting for us, people come to us for very specific reasons that we highlight, and that's really a draw, and it attracts them. And it's who we are. It's what we live and breathe every day. And so I just find that that's very important. Working in private sector, that was intentional everywhere I worked. In government, it's not as intentional. It's more just kind of happens. The more intention we can put to that, the more helpful it will help organizations to attract people in a cult and to understand where they might need to shift their culture to be whatever they want it to be: welcoming, open, customer service focused, whatever that is.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Brittany, what would you add to that in terms of the role that culture plays?
I think when we're recruiting and with current employees, that we're always trying to make sure that vision aligns, so that everyone is consistent to mission, vision, values of the district. So always trying to communicate that. So in those initial marketing materials, making sure that the candidate is aware of that, because that's at the center for the district. Additionally, we like to promote things like work-life balance. We're on a 4-10 work schedule. So things of that nature. When Kay talks about flexibility, just making sure that this candidate knows that we are trying to create an environment where we want to be productive, but we want to also be respectful to the things that you have going on outside of our organization.
Okay, great. So it's putting it out there, letting people know what to expect in terms of culture, what it's like to work there, what the things are that you value. Stephanie, what would you add to that?
I think for me, we're a fire authority. You know, our purpose is very clear. We protect life, we protect property, but there's a whole host of staff behind the scenes that makes it happen. So I think for us, when we talk about culture, what we try to do is create something that they can be proud of, not just internally, but externally. So we put a lot of time and a lot of investment into our external profile with the community. We highlight our employees on our social media. We talk about the kudos. We talk about the life-saving missions. We talk about the people behind the scenes that make it happen, because it's great. And I think every opportunity should be put to create the internal culture. But when they can have their families like our social media, join as a follower, and they can see, you know, Uncle Joe or Auntie Liz on the social media page, it's a source of pride. And I think that carries through to candidates, that our candidates will look at our social media and they will see that we highlight and we value our employees by taking the time to shout them out on social media. So I think as much as we can create an internal culture, you also want to have something that the external world can see, that you actually do value the work of your staff. And I think that carries a lot.
Right. And then people will see that when they are researching your organization. Kay, what were you going to say?
I'm going to add fire and police do that very well, especially fire. There's a lot of organizations that, like Brittany mentioned earlier, Instagram, that aren't really showing the culture of people working together. They have fun, but they're serious, that they care about these things. Kind of, who are they? What's that feel like? And that really aren't using that as much as they can. It can be done in a way that's, you know, respectful and professional, but it's important. It's so important to show that.
If I can add to that, to what Kay said, if you don't have a splash video yet for your organization, that is a snippet, 3 to 5 minutes, that just shows your culture, shows what you do to the community as a public sector agency, highlight some of your kudos and your accomplishments, that when somebody applies to your agency, they're either sent directly the video or they're text the link to the video. They can immediately click on the video as a candidate and see 3 to 5 minutes of what their life will look like at X agency. You're missing that marketing there. So I would highly encourage, if you don't already have one, have a 3 to 5 minute splash video for your organizations. And when a candidate applies, they automatically get a link to that video so that they can see themselves working for you.
Great point. Thank you for that. Anything else around that question about culture? So I do want to go back to another thing that you mentioned a few minutes ago, and that was the hiring for qualities. So what qualities are most public agencies looking for now? What qualities are you screening for when you do a quality screening? Okay, would you start for me?
Yeah, integrity. Like it's so important for what we do. And customer service, you know, someone that can team, communicate, problem solve, work with other people, collaborate. It's just, you're not doing this in a silo. Long gone or siloed departments, disciplines, whatever. You have to be able to solve these problems and work with others within your organization and across other organizations that your organization is near and working with. And so those are what we're seeing mostly. And it doesn't matter the level. You know, we see it a lot at the leadership level, but it's happening at all levels, that these things are important. Your park maintenance worker is on the street engaging with the public, and they, you know, you want them to engage in a way that's appropriate with the public, but they've got to solve a problem still. They've got to work with others. They've got to let people know about what's going on. And people are going to ask them questions about the community. And wouldn't it be great if you actually educated them about some things that you want them to share about your community that are really great, and that they had knowledge about those things and could engage in a conversation if they were so inclined. And so those are the kinds of things that are important at all levels, regardless of the tasks that someone might be doing.
Thanks for that, Kay. Brittany, what would you add?
I would agree with both Stephanie and Kay. For me, soft skills, one of the main things is that people first component. We're an essential service. So I want someone that has those customer service skills, those empathy skills, when you're out working on an emergency water main break, things of that nature. Again, the communication piece. I want you to be able to effectively communicate with our external customers, collaborate with the internal team. So all of that is extremely important to me when I'm interviewing candidates.
Okay, thank you. And that's a great point. You need to have someone who can explain, I'm sorry that we're turning off your water. This is what the issue is. Your water will be back on shortly because we're doing X, Y, and Z. To be able to do that in a way that people might not be happy about having their water turned off, but they feel good about how they were treated.
Sure.
Stephanie, what would you add?
I think the only other soft skill I would add is stress management. Anyone who works in public sector knows that this is not easy task. It's not for the soft-hearted. You will have lots of work with little budgets and always challenged to do more with less, and will inevitably come across the unhappy customer or client along the way. So for us, stress management and the ability to handle stressful situations is one that we absolutely ask about. We ask for very descriptive examples of how they've handled stressful situations, and really assess how they handled those things and how they've applied those skills to future challenges.
Right. And can you give me an example of what one of those, how a question about stress management?
So we
how you
normally
might
ask them
that?
an open-ended question of first, can you
Okay.
tell us about a time when you were placed under great stress, either due to a time constraint or workload or due to interaction with a member of the public? So we'll ask a very open-ended question and then follow that up with a hypothetical question that's very, very accurate to what they might experience in the role that they're applying for. And our panels are aimed with kind of a rubric. How did they assess the situation? What skills did they use in order to deal with the situation? What was the outcome of the situation and what did they learn from it? So we really try to hit every single one of those markers when the person answers the question. We're very intentional about going back and asking the follow-up if they miss one of those things, because we want to see their train of thought in assessing that. And so it's the open-ended, then it's the very specific hypothetical.
Great. Thank you for that, Kay.
I want to add to that. Like, that is so important to have those follow-ups. You don't want someone, because people will not answer the question. And then that there's not the experience or the skill, or they're not thinking about it in that way, or they will just tell a story, a textbook story that they want you to hear. And then, again, they're not thinking about the question and answering it, or they don't have something to put in place. So you want to listen for those things to understand, is the candidate, answering what I need them to answer to understand? Do they have the skill, the quality that we're looking for? And the other thing that we add, Stephanie, to that is, what did you do when it didn't go so well? How did you behave? What happened when something didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, or didn't go as expected? And what did you learn? How did you turn it around? Did you not turn it around? What did you learn? Just again, are they able to have some people will be, I've never had something happen. I've never been in that experience. Well, that's kind of hard to believe with what we do on a day-to-day basis. We've all had something not go well. So.
Yeah. And one of the things that we look for when answering that stress management question is, what kind of help did they ask for?
Yeah.
Because you don't want someone who's going to try to fix it by themselves.
Yeah.
And possibly get them and the organization into a liability situation. And very rarely will somebody say, I asked for help, or I asked my manager what to do, or I asked my colleague for what. And when they do, it's like ding, 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 like, thank you. Thank you. You asked for help. That's great. That's a great skill.
Great. And Brittany, would you have anything to add to that in terms of asking those questions? Or phrasing questions in a way that helps you understand the quality that a person has?
No, nothing really to add. I just like Kay's point about listening for what they're not saying. So that goes kind of back to that blind spotting. So yeah, but
Okay.
no, they covered it well.
Great. Thank you. And we have a question from Gabe Ruiz. I'm going to go ahead and weave that in right now. And that's, Gabe, thank you for asking this question. What strategies have you successfully used to present a strong business case to leadership for increasing headcount, especially when budgets are tight?
Mhm.
I think many places are facing today. Your thoughts about that one, Stephanie? Are you willing to start?
Sure, I could start. When you talk about the business case, it comes down to dollars and cents. When you're talking about hiring personnel, if you're speaking specifically about HR positions, which, it's very hard to hire, increase your headcount for HR positions. You're normally the ones that have to deal with what you get. It's making the business case with regard to liabilities, exposure to litigation, the cost of settlements when the agency is hit with a big litigation and we have to settle these cases out. Having more people means that things can be done better, higher quality, because people have the time to focus on the work. If it's not HR and it's other components, again, it's the what are you avoiding by hiring these people? Make the business case that what you're avoiding is more expensive than hiring someone at that position. So whether it's cost of overtime, if it's something that you're routinely hiring overtime against, a lot of agencies will say, well, it's cheaper to hire someone on overtime than to hire a new position. But when you're hiring someone on overtime and you're overworking them because now they're working 50 hours and 60 hours, you're increasing the ability for that member to be injured, which means workers' comp costs. It means that person will inevitably take more leave, sick leave, or vacation because they're burned out, which means backfill behind them because now they're not there to do their job and you're paying somebody else to work overtime. Or they wind up going someplace else because they are overworked, because you've overworked them. They'll go someplace else, and now you have the hiring cost behind them. So really making a case for how much it costs to hire behind them when they leave is another avenue you can explore. We've quantified how much it costs to hire a firefighter, how much it costs to hire an administrative assistant, how much it costs to hire a senior management analyst, not just in the actual dollars and cents, but in the time it takes to onboard them, to retrain them, because somebody else has to train them, which means they're not doing their original job, they're training the new person. So all of those avenues you can pursue to make the business case that it's going to be in the long run cheaper to increase your headcount and hire qualified people.
All right, the cost of doing nothing. Thank you for that. And let me just check in with Brittany. What would you add to that?
I would agree with that. The cost comparisons for sure. My first strategy is always data. I'm always looking to the data to back me up. So we currently do staffing projections. We're doing it in 3-year increments. So we're trying to identify those future gaps, work that is coming down the pipeline, always trying to tie back a need for additional staff to, again, mission, vision, values, and the strategic plan. So making sure that there's a case to align with what do we need to do above and beyond daily operations. And then in my shop, we're doing skill gap assessments of, we have these projections of work that's going to be necessary in the next 3 years. Can our internal staff already handle that? Do we have budget for external services? So just making sure that we can always refer back to report or some type of time study as a strategy for additional folks.
Right, that data, looking at that and tossing out a wide net with regard to kind of the organizational impact. Thank you. Kay, what would you add?
I'm just pulling in both what Brittany and Stephanie have shared. This is with the new law, AB 2561, don't be afraid of that. This data that they're talking about is really what should even be shared beyond what is legally supposed to be shared. Because that's the story of all the successful things that these human resource departments are doing for their organizations to hire staff and fill positions. And it's a good story that they're looking at things in these ways, and to be able to explain that to the public. That hearing is the place to take that and use it, and to help leverage that in places where you can support your departments and that information, so that as your executive management team and your elected boards kind of know what's happening. Because sometimes people think of HR just as I get people on benefits, I onboard someone, but you're really the strategy people in the organization helping pull everything together for good decision making in your organizations about how to help support the work that's being done. And so I applaud you both on what you're doing because it sounds amazing, but that's what's important. And I think AB 2561 is a place, like, people were kind of afraid of it, but use it to your advantage. Turn it on its heels and share the good stuff you're doing. So,
and the one line description of, because I'm not sure that everybody knows what AB 2561 is. So the one line description of AB 2561 is
a legal requirement for organizations to report in a hearing their vacancy rates, their retention rates, what's going on in their recruiting efforts and retention efforts within their organization for employees.
okay, great. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
don't be afraid of AB 2561 and yeah, recognize that it's a great way to kind of put out there and open up the conversation of the cost of doing nothing. Nancy just posted that we're going to open up to questions in a few minutes. I have two more very quick questions, important questions. And one of them is, how is federal policy impacting recruitment around diversity, equity, and inclusion, if at all? Are you seeing an impact? Are you feeling an impact in your organizations with regard to that?
We live in California. We have our own law that has to be followed. It's important. That's the way I feel about it.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. Stephanie?
Yeah,
are you
for
seeing
us,
the impact of that?
I think what's going on at the federal level is impacting the political climate, and it's not necessarily changing rules, but it's changing attitudes of our governing bodies. So I'll tell a short story. We had a change in our board of directors, which we do pretty much every 1 to 2 years because we have a 25-member board. Each board member is a city council member for one of the cities that we serve as OC Fire. So we had a change in our board, and one of our newest board members was very vocal, very, very vocal, that he absolutely 100% wanted to do away with anything DEI, and that it was going to be his mission and vision for the organization to do away with all of it. So what I've told my team, and this is the message that I try to hold very dear to us, is that as HR professionals, we've been doing this work since the dawn of HR, realizing that the foundational principles of fairness, professionalism, respect, equity, those were all fundamental policies in ER, in employee relations, in the way we do reasonable accommodations, in the way we handle labor investigations. Regardless of the title, it's fundamentally part of HR work to make sure that everybody has fairness in the workplace. So what we've done is, I want to get away from trying to hide it's a saying that someone told me, I want to get away from hiding the veggies in the lasagna, right? By just taking away the labels. We're not taking away the labels. We're getting back to foundational principles that HR has always espoused. Our policies and procedures have always supported. And what I caution agencies on in reframing it is that we are not being exclusionary when we have these programs. I think the sentiment of those that would like to see all of these programs go away is that they feel like these programs are exclusionary to one group or another. And so what we have to espouse to, and what we have to be very intentional and transparent about, is that these principles apply to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a 40-year-old white male, if you're a 20-year-old Asian Pacific Islander, it doesn't matter. These policies apply to everybody. And I would challenge anyone who wants to do away with DEI programs to look at that as a sentiment and say, I don't support that. I think everybody would support that, as long as they realize that it's not exclusionary to one group or another.
Did your board member, after you gave that explanation, did your board member have a change of heart, or did they respond?
So I've been very fortunate that the fire chief is 100% behind our programming as far as diversity and inclusion. He got a commitment from the board member that before he made any pronouncements about changes to our program, he would give me the platform to make a full presentation to the board of directors. I have not been asked to do that. So whether it's because they know what the message is going to be and it's not going to be something that can be argued, or maybe he's gearing up his counter arguments and the ask will come, I'm prepared for it because I fully 100% support that these are foundational principles that every HR person espouses to, every public agency espouses to. And I will go to the mat to fight for that.
Thank you for that. Brittany, what would you add?
I would agree with that 100%. Not much to add. These are foundational principles. You cannot get away from them. Equity, fairness, all of those things are, I mean, paramount. But really, if it's, the terms of DEI that is causing divisiveness and confusion, really just to break it down to the simplest terms of you want to have the most broad workforce that you can have. You want to get away from groupthink mentality. You want to have that diversity that's going to lead to a better overall program. So we can call it whatever we want, pick a name. But again, this is based on foundational principles. And when you have these things in place, it's going to make you a more dynamic organization. So.
Great points. Excellent points. Thank you. And is there anything else around that, Kay, that you wanted to add?
No, I mean, the EEOC is still the EEO law is still the law. California
Right.
has its counterpart. Civil rights law is still the law that we must follow. And we have positions to fill, and we need everyone to try and apply to fill those positions. And so that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. So we have just a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we, if we have questions in the audience, that you go ahead and type those into Q&A. And I have a couple more questions. So if nothing comes in, I have to, oh yeah, Nancy just posted, please feel free to ask any questions. It's not very often that we get 3 people who have the exceptional kind of experience that the 3 of you have, or folks can ask you questions. Folks are saying it in the Q&A how much they appreciate your expertise. I guess my question is, how do you see, as Kay, you mentioned earlier that it's a field, recruiting and retention is always changing. What do you see the changes might be in the future? We've gone through a lot with regard to how we view prospective employees and reframing that 2 years worth of experience and finding ways to use technology to engage people and stay in touch. What other ways do you think that the field is going to be changing in the next couple of years? Any thoughts on that?
I think that we're going to need to be helping our organizations learn how to do some work a little differently. Some work like fighting a fire, helping someone on a medical call, that's in person. You have to go out with Brittany's agency, turn the wrench on the pipe, fix the pipe, and get it going. And then where we can find those efficiencies in other areas with technology without losing the human touch, because we're serving humans, is going to be really important in helping our different organizations and departments into finding those ways, because the workforce is smaller moving forward. There will be less people to do the work. So there will need to be some shifts in that over time. And if you're not looking at that, then that could be a problem when you're trying to fill just the way you've always done something. There's going to have to be some shift.
Yep. Great points. Stephanie, what would you add?
I think for agencies that have either full remote, hybrid, or some kind of telecommute, we have to find ways to create environments where people can create connection. One of the things about retaining people is that they'll stay if they want to work there because it's a good environment. But if all of your staff or half of your staff are remote or hybrid and they don't even know the person that technically works in the next cubicle beside them, there's really there's nothing to lose if they jump ship and go to a different agency. So whether it's you're creating virtual offices where people can actually share news about each other and, hey, did you hear Mary had a baby? Everybody chimes in and says, congratulations, Mary, you have a virtual party, for her. Things like that that can substitute for a full in-person relationship. You have to do it with intentionality because it doesn't happen overnight. But if we can do that, create these virtual offices where people can still develop those types of relationships, it's not going to fix it. It's not going to fix the problem of not having the same kind of relationships, but at least it can help.
Great points. And Brittany, what would you add to that?
I would say shifts that I see being more focused on wellness, rewards and recognition, to tie back to the very beginning of our conversation, Stephanie mentioning this newer generation wanting that recognition. So all of those things where folks who have a lot of experience in the public sector where maybe that was not at the forefront, I see within the next few years really needing focused programs around those things.
Okay, great. Thank you. We only have just a couple of minutes left. So I'm just going to ask you each in 30 seconds if you could say what's the one thing that you really think people need to pay attention to when it comes to recruiting and retention. 30 seconds each. Stephanie?
Can I start? Can I use my 30 seconds to answer Greg's question in the chat?
I didn't see
It's
that
okay. It's
question.
okay.
Thank you.
But
Yes,
I will
yes,
use
please
my 30
do.
seconds to answer Greg's question. I think when it comes to part-time staff, they're part-time. If it's by choice to be part-time, it's usually because
Mhm.
they've got something else in their life that they're pursuing, either education or maybe family events. I think keeping part-time staff requires some flexibility and allowing opportunities for them to grow, either through tuition reimbursement if they're pursuing schooling. So if your part-time staff aren't eligible for tuition reimbursement, allowing them to participate in that program if you have one, flexible schedules so that your part-time staff, although they are part-time, have the ability to have flexibility with their schedules to accommodate their life, and hopefully that means that they'll be staying. And then ensuring that there is a lucrative ability for them to promote. So a viable and lucrative ability for them to promote either into full-time or higher level part-time positions if they're available.
Well, thank you for
I
that.
would
And I'm going to
add
go
to
ahead
that.
and Kate, actually, but we only have 2 minutes left and another
Okay,
question came in. So I'm going to toss this one to you and Brittany. And that is, are there thoughts and strategies on Gen Z and millennials leaving jobs earlier at a higher rate than older generations? That it's the quick quitting or the great, that it's the quick quitting or the great resignation. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and Kate, let you respond to this
I
question.
think that leads to what Stephanie said before. People are moving every couple of years because sometimes they want a different experience that they're not going to be able to get in your organization. If you can understand what that is and offer it to keep them there longer, then that will help you retain those individuals for a longer period of time. And communication channels. Do you have text channels? Do you have different ways of communicating with people based on how they like to communicate is really helpful.
Great. Thank you. And Brittany, would you like to respond to that question as well?
I would just say take advantage of these multi-generational work program trainings that are popping up. It does give you strategy in how to deal with some of these Gen Z and millennial concerns. Additionally, I would say tailor the relationship from the very beginning as a partnership. Stephanie alluded to it, Kay talked about it again, making sure they know their plan from the very beginning of, hey, here's where we see you going, or that open conversation of, if I'm not going to keep you, let's really be honest about how to make the best of your time here. So.
Great. Thank you. So and what I hear loud and clear is that treat people like they are valued from the very beginning.
For sure.
And continue that throughout their employment. I'm so appreciative of the three of you's time today. Really, I am. Great conversation. Nancy just posted an evaluation in the webinar chat. If you could go ahead and respond to that, it would be great. And I am going to say thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great afternoon.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.